The date was November 15, 2003.
Pacquiao is strafing Barrera with left hand.
Survived this round, and Pacquiao runs out of gas a few rounds later.
And inside the Alamodome in San Antonio, Texas, two men were about to meet in a collision that would change boxing history.
Well, the ref might stop it for them. Barrera's corner man is up on the apron.
On one side, Marco Antonio Barrera, the beloved Mexican legend,
Antonio Barrera.
a surgeon in gloves, a national hero with scalpel-precise punches, and a resume that could fill a Hall of Fame wing. On the other, Manny Pacquiao,
Manny Pacquiao.
a smiling destroyer from the Philippines whose speed could slice air, whose left hand could end nights in an instant. Barrera was the established king. Pacquiao was the storm on the horizon, and nobody, not even Barrera.
You wanted to see executions. You didn't think anybody was going to beat him. Everybody he fought looked like they were about to die.
Truly understood just how violent that storm would be. This is the night Pacquiao didn't just beat Barrera. He dismantled him, round by round, minute by minute, until the baby-faced assassin was no longer the man who terrorized divisions. And for millions of Filipinos back home, this wasn't just a fight. This was a nation's son stepping into the ring, carrying the weight of every dreamer who had ever been told, "You can't." So how did Pacquiao break a champion who seemed unbreakable? Let's rewind. Marco Antonio Barrera wasn't just a champion, he was the champion. The man who had tamed the wild Prince Nassim Hamed, the warrior who went to war with Eric Morales 3 times and came out standing. His style was a paradox, calm, calculated, yet capable of violence at a moment's notice. In Mexico, his name carried the same reverence as Julio Cesar Chavez. By 2003, Barrera was the pride of his country, a living embodiment of boxing mastery. Manny Pacquiao, on the other hand, was still a name casual fans stumbled over when pronouncing. Born into grinding poverty in General Santos City, he turned pro at just 16 years old. So young, he lied about his age just to get licensed. He'd fought with rocks in his pockets to make weight, walked miles barefoot to training, and sent every spare peso home to keep his family fed. By the time he set foot in America's boxing spotlight, Pacquiao had already become a 2-weight world champion. But to many, he was still that Filipino southpaw. Dangerous, sure, but untested against the very best. Barrera was supposed to be the wall he couldn't climb. The baby-faced assassin entered the Alamodome with a record of precision victories and the kind of ring IQ that dismantles reckless fighters. Pacquiao entered with the fastest hands in the division and a grin that masked a predator's intent. For the 10,000+ in attendance, the stakes were clear. For Mexican fans, this was about defending their legend. For Filipino fans, it was about announcing their arrival on boxing's biggest stage.
And his opponent across the ring.
And for everyone watching at home, especially those who still remember exactly where they were that night, it was about to become a fight they'd never forget. In the weeks before the fight, the contrast between the two men was as sharp as the punches they'd soon throw. Barrera, now in his late 20s, was boxing royalty. He carried himself like a man who'd been through wars and knew he could win another. Reporters saw the confidence in his body language, the slow, measured speech, the steady eye contact. For Mexican fans, this fight wasn't a question of if he'd win, but how. Many expected a technical schooling, the same way he'd neutralized Prince Nassim Hamed. Pacquiao, on the other hand, was all smiles outside the ring. Soft-spoken, polite, never trash-talking. But those who knew him, like Freddie Roach, understood that behind that grin was a switch. Once the bell rang, it would flip. And when it flipped, the man across from him was in trouble. Freddie Roach had studied hours of Barrera footage. He knew Barrera liked to control the pace, dictate the range, and punish fighters who rushed in. Roach's plan for Pacquiao was deceptively simple. Start fast, stay unpredictable, and never let Barrera feel comfortable enough to think. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, the anticipation was electric. Streets would empty, businesses closed early, and families gathered around flickering TVs. For a country used to political chaos and economic struggle, the fight offered a rare moment of unity. This wasn't just a sporting event, it was a national holiday in spirit. In San Antonio's Alamodome, the atmosphere was split right down the middle. One half roared, "Barrera," in deep rhythmic chants, waving Mexican flags. The other half shouted, "Manny! Manny!" in bursts that cut through the air like Pacquiao's left hand. It wasn't just two fighters entering the ring. It was two nations colliding under bright lights. When the fighters touched gloves, there was no smile from Pacquiao. The storm was about to begin. The bell rang for round one, and right away, Barrera came out with a surprising approach. Known for being a patient counterpuncher, he took the center of the ring and pressed forward, pumping the jab to test Pacquiao's timing. The baby-faced assassin wasn't giving the newcomer any courtesy rounds. He wanted to set the tone early. Just over a minute in, Pacquiao stumbled to the canvas after tangling feet with Barrera. Lawrence Cole, the referee, called it a knockdown. The crowd erupted, half in celebration, half in outrage. On replay, it was clear no punch had landed clean. It was a slip, but in real time, the official ruling gave Barrera an early psychological edge. Pacquiao, unfazed, went back to stalking, pawing with his right jab to measure distance. He was looking for his signature weapon, the straight left, but Barrera's guard was tight, his counters sharp. Manny threw combinations, but Barrera slipped and fired back, clipping him with a left hook that drew cheers from the Mexican fans. The second round opened differently. Pacquiao's corner had told him to step in harder behind the jab and double up punches. Early in the round, Manny landed a thudding left straight down the pipe, snapping Barrera's head back. The speed difference was becoming obvious. Midway through the round, Pacquiao closed the distance with a quick 1-2. The left landed flush on Barrera's jaw, and this time there was no debate. Barrera hit the canvas. He bounced up immediately, shaking his head, but the look in his eyes told a different story. He now knew the Filipino's power was real. The crowd was in full voice now. "Manny! Manny!" echoing against Barrera! Barrera! As the two traded in the center of the ring. The fight had gone from tactical to tense, and Pacquiao, sensing opportunity, was just getting warmed up. By round 6, the fight had a different feel. Barrera, once the ring general, was now being marched around the canvas by Pacquiao's relentless pace. Manny wasn't just throwing punches, he was throwing them in blinding sequences, each flurry ending with that sledgehammer left hand. Barrera tried to reassert himself with body work, leaning in and digging hooks to Manny's midsection. But every time he landed one, Pacquiao answered with 2 or 3 upstairs. The speed gap was glaring. Pacquiao's combinations were snapping Barrera's head back before the Mexican legend could reset his guard. In the 7th, Barrera made another push. He stepped in behind a stiff jab and caught Manny with a counter left hook that momentarily slowed the Filipino's advance. But moments later, Pacquiao surged back with a furious barrage. Left cross, right hook, left uppercut, each punch clean, each one met with gasps from the crowd. The frustration started to show. In a clinch, Barrera's head clashed with Pacquiao's again, drawing another warning from the referee. The boos from Manny's fans mixed with cheers from Barrera's loyalists. The sound in the Alamodome now pure chaos. Freddie Roach between rounds kept his message simple. Don't give him time to think. Keep the pressure. Break him down. Pacquiao obeyed to the letter. By round 9, Barrera was spending more time circling away than engaging. Pacquiao's footwork cut off escape routes, trapping Barrera in corners where the combinations flowed like water. The Mexican champion's face told the story. Swelling around the eyes, a cut beginning to form. The baby-faced assassin, who once carved up opponents with surgical precision, was now forced into survival mode. And Manny Pacquiao, still smiling between bursts of violence, showed no signs of slowing down. By the 10th round, the outcome felt inevitable. Barrera's offense had dwindled to single hopeful shots. A jab here, a counter right there, but nothing to slow the Filipino onslaught. Pacquiao's footwork was still sharp, his hands still a blur. He wasn't just winning, he was dominating every exchange. Midway through the round, Manny trapped Barrera in the corner and unloaded a vicious series. Right jab, straight left, right hook, another left. The last shot snapped Barrera's head so violently that even the pro-Mexican section gasped. Somehow Barrera stayed upright, his pride refusing to let him fold. But Pacquiao was merciless. In the 11th, he opened with a flurry to the body before pivoting up top. A clean left hand landed flush, and Barrera staggered. Sensing the end, Manny swarmed. 3, 4, 5 unanswered shots. Barrera's guard was high but leaky, his counters slow and desperate. Then, finally, the inevitable. As Manny poured on another combination, Barrera's corner stepped up onto the ring apron, waving their arms. The referee saw them and halted the fight at 2:56 of the round. The noise in the Alamodome was deafening. Pacquiao leaped into the air, arms raised, a grin splitting his face. Barrera, ever the warrior, stood tall in defeat, but his eyes told the truth. Tonight, he'd been beaten by a younger, faster, hungrier man. For the Filipino fans, both in the arena and halfway across the world, it was a moment of pure triumph. The kid who once fought with rocks in his pockets had just dismantled one of the sport's most feared champions. The baby-faced assassin was no more. In his place stood a humbled veteran, and opposite him, a smiling Storm who had just announced himself as a force the boxing world could no longer ignore. When the final bell, or in this case, the corner's surrender, marked the end, the official result read, Manny Pacquiao, winner by TKO, new WBC featherweight champion of the world. But the title belt was just one part of what Manny had taken that night. He'd taken Barrera's aura. He'd taken the doubts of every critic who thought he couldn't hang with the elite. And he'd taken a giant leap toward boxing immortality. This was no fluke. In the months and years that followed, Pacquiao would cement his place among the sport's legends. Just 4 months later, he'd face Juan Manuel Marquez in the first of their 4 epic encounters. He'd go on to dismantle Erik Morales, retire Oscar De La Hoya, crush Ricky Hatton in 2 rounds.
Morales.
Take a look at this. Take a look at this.
This is a perfect time.
That was super slow motion.
And in 2010 become the only fighter in history to win world titles in 8 different weight divisions.
Covered boxing for 24 years, and I covered Ray Leonard from ringside, and this is the best offensive fighter I've ever seen.
For Barrera, the loss was a turning point. Though still a respected contender and future Hall of Famer, he never quite carried the same invincible presence after this night. Yet, over time, mutual respect grew between the two. Years later, Barrera would call Pacquiao one of the greatest fighters he'd ever faced. In the Philippines, this victory was more than sport. It was a unifying moment. Streets flooded with celebrations, jeepneys blaring horns, fireworks lighting the sky. For a country often divided by politics and hardship, Manny was proof that greatness could come from anywhere. Looking back now, it's easy to call this the night Pacquiao truly arrived on the world stage. But for those who were watching live, it was more than an arrival. It was a storm breaking through the old guard, fast, ruthless, and unforgettable. November 15, 2003 wasn't just another date in boxing's long history. It was the night a smiling southpaw from the Philippines walked into the ring as a talented contender and walked out a global superstar. Marco Antonio Barrera was supposed to be the wall Manny Pacquiao couldn't climb. Instead, he became the first brick in a road that would lead Pacquiao to 8 world titles, legendary rivalries, and a legacy still unmatched. For Barrera, the loss didn't erase his greatness. It simply proved that even the most skilled assassin can be outgunned by speed, hunger, and an unshakable will. For fans, this fight became one of those rare, remember where you were moments. The chants, the knockdowns, the pace, everything about it screamed that we were witnessing something special. And if you thought this was the peak, it was only the beginning. Because next, Pacquiao would meet a man who would test him like no other, Juan Manuel Marquez. But that is another war for another day. This was the night Manny Pacquiao showed zero respect for the baby-faced assassin and earned the respect of the world.